So, I stand before you as just a regular guy, looking to make my mark before I leave. The thing is, how do I do that? Will I just go about the tried and tested way? Will I just be regular? How does this make me any different from the next person who's trying to make their mark? How does this make me any different from the next person who's volunteering? Am I just adding something to my CV? Or am I adding value to the lives of those around me? These were the embers of the fire in my mind, waiting to be fanned. Our parents, family, friends, they all help to mold us into who we are or what we are. They taught us and they built us through their stories to inspire our own. Mine is one of hills and valleys, failures and successes, but in all this, I'll focus just in 3 aspects of my life: medicine, business, and advocacy. Inspiring innovation may seem an arduous task, but it's in fact an inborn art rather than an acquired skill. And I will tell you this, that my brightest ideas have come in those random times when I let my mind sail away. A sudden spark that brings that random idea, a brave new frontier of thought. But is it truly so? More often than not, I find that I'm able to deconstruct and rework my ideas easily because they were inspired by something I saw, I read, or I did. My parents would always say that there are new things to be had now, in this moment, but there is nothing that is new under this sun, except maybe the heat. The greatest thinkers and doers devoted their efforts to providing inputs to their senses, a sort of fuel that they got from doing, reading, and seeing, more that allowed them to develop themselves and to delve deeper into these acts, because the more you do, the more you do. Sounds silly, but we'll get to it. We see people like Nikola Tesla, Bill Gates, and Marie Curie, and we wonder, how is it that they have achieved all that they have? How is it that they got there? What did they do? What makes them different from me? And it's these questions that I'll attempt to deconstruct for you. Innovation is unlike anything you've ever done, yet still, it comes from the things that you have done. The more you do, the more you do. The thing is, there are no set templates, no set rules, no set measures that I follow. Of course, there are templates out there you can research for yourself, but I advise you, each of you is an individual unto yourself and unto a greater collective. And what works for you does not work for the next. In a sense, each act of innovation is a unique feat, a leap of the individual, or, as is in this great cooperative land of Guyana, the collective. So we see that, in fact, innovation is anything but business as usual. So we get to my next aspect, which I look at your internal journey, moving from without to within, so that you can come back to the without. There's no use in sitting around complaining about what you consider to be a lack of opportunities, a lack of resources, or even the support of others. As I mentioned before, innovation is unique in this time. And of course, being creatures of comfort, we're naturally opposed to change. Remove those negative elements of doubt from within and go forth with conviction. Remove those negative elements of doubt from within and go forth with conviction. Remember that. Many of my peers often ask me how I managed medical school with volunteerism, a job on the side, and then, of course, running my own winery. And I'll tell you, my hair fell out. I lost weight. But it was a sacrifice worth making. To be honest, I hadn't the slightest clue how I did it. But I did it because I found something that worked for me, which is the same reason why you have to find something that works for you. Because my systems are not necessarily yours. But of course, you have to learn from what I have already learned from. Again, we do to do more. I read on time and resource management an interesting concept called time stealing, where you try to get a lot done by stealing bits of time from other aspects of your life by delegation. And as a good friend of mine, Dr. Vishal Joseph, who's actually a speaker here today, once said, if you cannot delegate, you cannot lead. You cannot be a leader unto yourself. And I practiced and I learned from my mistakes. And trust me, there were quite a few mistakes. So much so that on many nights I went home crying, I couldn't sleep, and I wondered what next. But looking back, I was able to deconstruct. I paid no mind to those elements that added no value to my life. I paid no mind to what seemed impossible. And I stopped the internal bickering of my wants and my needs and focused on the latter. What is it that I needed to do to continue on my journey? So I fought that negativity. I fought my own internal negativity, and I fought the negativity coming from without. But not with a full frontal barrage of retorts, but allowing it to stoke my own flames of my needs, of my true desires. And every time somebody said that wine would not be a big seller in Guyana, I would give them a sample. Here's a glass of wine. Here's a bottle of wine. And of course, for those of you sitting here, we all know that wine is now becoming a big thing in Guyana. But through it all, that negativity became my fuel. But not all of this was possible by myself. It was only possible with the support of great individuals who I learned from by reading about them, by listening to them, by seeing them and doing more with them, by surrounding myself with the people who I wanted to be like. Not the people I wanted to be, but the people I wanted to be like. I went beyond my own reasoning and I merged my passion with purpose and conviction. I found the things that I wanted to do because I had a passion for them and there was a purpose in doing them. Not just because I wanted to go attend a nice university, not just because I wanted to have something nice in my CV, but because I wanted to know that what I set my mind to, because I set my mind to it, knowing that I wanted to do it, was possible. And I knew what the possible outcomes, of that end game could be. But how do we go about that? How do we find what we want to do? So I asked, what if? And oftentimes, it takes a lot to find the inner motivation, to search for new ideas on your own. But out in the world, as intelligent and creative people, like we all are, at some point or other, you'll be asked to generate ideas and solutions to either incredibly exciting or incredibly mundane problems in life. And now that we've stopped the bickering, we fought off our negativity, and we're asking, what if? And you're letting your mind play, or as I mentioned before, sail away. Usually, one of the best ways to reconnect is to sail away not only within your own thought, but within the thoughts that were inspired by doing more, seeing more, reading more. And for me, it was a liberating feeling to rediscover my own curiosity and to do so in each problem that presented itself, as opposed to using a set template over and over and over. Meshing and linking those ideas that continuously presented an array of outcomes that simply started with, what if? What if I went this way? What if I went that way? What if I asked my cousin for help? What if I asked my friend for help? What if I listened to someone else? And I'll say to you that in our maturity as adults, younger adults, not so young adults, you'll find that a playful mind is inquisitive and learning is genuinely fun. If you indulge your natural curiosity and retain a sense of fun in what you're doing and in each new experience, whilst of course exploring the outcomes of each what if, it makes the journey even more compelling and definitely more encouraging. Why? Because you know what you want to do, you've found your passion, You found your purpose, and you're getting it done. We're moving on to failure. Failure is a big thing that we want to discuss in success. Now, there are indefinite definitions of a successful life or success in any venture. Maybe like me, you want to be the president. You want to be an army officer. You want to be successful in business. You want to be successful in school, or whatever that definition takes on for you. If we ask what we want to be, answers come easily. But I challenge you, ask yourself this. What happens when we ask ourselves, what is it that we fear? Fearing failure can leave us stuck in a rut, living life by rote, because you're safe in your comfort and you're resistant to change. Afraid to place the bets and take the risks that will elevate us beyond our dreams, beyond what Jen Aji told us we could be, beyond what our grandfathers and our neighbors told us that we could be. And success lies in that tension between the fear and letting go in that discovery. And that tension will always be there. It will always be. There is fear for me to come up on this stage. Because, of course, this is my first time at a TED Talk. But as long as you desire to explore, and that desire is greater than your desire to not screw up, you're on the right track. Not only to innovate, but to do more and to be more. Oftentimes, we tend to create a strict set of guidelines and rules in our heads, even without being told anything. Much like the previous approach to business that I held. And I'm sure in this room, some of you might have held as well. Which meant that I had to do certain things. I had to meet the highest imaginable standards that I thought were standards. And I just needed perfection. Or at least, that's what I imagined it to be. But then I failed. And my biggest challenge was questioning and overcoming those ideas to come to a conclusion that I didn't need to follow any rules in creating new products or new offers and services. Maslow's hierarchy of needs illustrates the levels and steps that we need to go through before we can truly be creative. And these steps leading up to innovation outline the risks involved in striving for that creativity, putting us out of our comfort zone, taking us away from societal norms, taking us away from the things that our parents and our peers taught us. And I found that overcoming this was a simple, yet paradoxically difficult task that included not just resisting the judgment and the ridicule of others over ideas that seem outlandish, but seeking the good bits from them and from within to fuel that passion. And of course, accepting the fact that I needed to be patient and recover quickly from failure. Being open to new ideas and experimentation and accepting Murphy's Law, that anything that can go wrong will go wrong, is not something that you need to be ashamed of. And there's no shame in making a mistake. But there is shame in making that mistake over and over and over again. Learn from it, and don't make the same one again. Everything I've learned by making mistakes, and from my failures, from the failures of my peers, my family. My brother once told me, oftentimes, the one who starts something is not necessarily the best to continue its development. And this is wrong true in so many aspects of my experiences. When it comes to family business, my personal business, even in advocacy. Even when you sit on a panel and egos clash, ideas clash, and everybody wants to be the heavyweight. We tend to think of ourselves as leaders in our own right, that we may be best for our process, and therefore renounce suggestions of those seeking the same possible outcomes. But I've learned to always work with people who are smarter than you, who can do the job better than you, who've been doing it longer than you, and even the people who you thought that you were smarter than. People with different backgrounds will bring different frames of reference to a problem and can spark an exciting and dynamic exchange that leads to outcomes that you, the individual, could not possibly conceive on your own. And diversity is without a doubt best wed to innovation. Just look at this room. The persons who came together to bring this TEDx talk possibly could not have done it on their own. It is their diversity of thought and action, by reading more to find out what needed to be done, by doing more and being more, we're here today. And without this marriage of sorts, we tend to approach problems in our individuality, like a car on a one-way street, except on Guyanese one-way streets, missing out on all the opportunities for innovation. In my early years of medicine, we were taught not to focus on each other as competitors, but as a greater, innovative collective. And coming from a high school system that taught you that you attended the best school in the country, you're better than everyone else, medical school taught me, hey, you're not up here. You're down here with everyone else. You're just regular, and people from other spheres, other frames of reference can bring insight into your life. And that is so true. We are taught to collate our skills to better understand the environment and the problems at hand, the peaks and the valleys in interventions. Because as individuals, we tend to focus on the best possible outcomes, but we never look at what the worst possible outcomes would be. And it's those valleys in our competition that we tend to overlook. Focusing on our competitors, we tend to overlook the things that they have overlooked because we're trying to be better than them, as opposed to being better versions of ourselves. And in innovation, especially considering all these elements, we may have even looked over our own individuality. With that, all that being said, I close by saying, clear away all that holds you back and determine your own methods of igniting those sparks within. Fight the negativity. Ask yourself, what if? And stop fearing failure. Put aside your own egos and learn from your mistakes. You're not from the best school in the country. You're not from the best workplace or the best organization. We are, after all, a cooperative republic. And we are cooperative people. Learn from your mistakes. And lastly, go forth from this place this evening with the conviction that the world is yours and yours, much like a plain sheet of paper, waiting for you to write your own story thereupon. I thank you.